Hello there, artistic friends. Thank you so much for joining me today for painterly blending for cloth texture in chalk pastel. My name is Diane and I'm excited to get started, so let's get to it. So before we crack into the drawing and coloring, I'm just going to walk you through the materials you'll need. You will need a piece of paper suitable for chalk pastel drawing, a pencil, and eraser to draw with. You'll need your reference photo to work from. This painting is by Mary Cassatt, called Young Mother Sewing, painted in 1900, oil on canvas. So just internet search this, download and print it out, or you're welcome to work from your screen, an iPad or a phone or whatever if you prefer. I prefer working from a piece of paper printed out reference. I find it easier, but you can do whatever you would like. And you'll find that information on the bottom of your screen as well. So you can pause the video, copy it, get your reference ready, and then move on when you're ready. And you'll need a set of chalk pastels. So I have a large set here. You can have a large set if you want. Large sets just mean you don't have to mix colors as much because you have a much bigger variety to choose from. But if you have a small set or you kind of want to force yourself to have to mix colors as an exercise, then you can absolutely do that. So with that said, let's get going with the drawing. So we're not working on drawing accuracy here, just really the rendering. So you can just we're just going to be doing a section of the girl's dress, like the waist part, the torso part. So you can just sort of draw in the back edge as it slopes down past the belt. Here's the belt. It's going to cut forward, and the angle of the sleeve kind of comes down something like this. There's a big bulby sleeve here with a little corner in it. And then underneath we have sort of this cloth, and then the belt is bigger. I'm going to make the belt a little thicker. So something like that. You're welcome to draw in wrinkles if you want. Just don't draw the really faint ones. You can draw sort of the major ones if it's helpful. I'm going to do a few just so I have kind of a guide. But that's optional. You can also just eyeball it if you'd like. I'll put this little top edge thingy on over the sleeve. And keep in mind, this is going to look a little awkward. It's a disembodied torso, so it doesn't look like a person, but we're just working on cloth here. So the first thing you're going to do after you're done with the drawing, satisfied with the drawing, is cover the whole dress with just plain white. So find just a regular white, no off-white, because this is a very cool white. It's like a bright white, so we don't want any yellows in there. Actually, I should take that back. There are hints of yellow, but we're going to put those in later. The base is just white. So color a little bit on this side of your paper to make sure it's clean, and then just color in the entire thing. And because this is an exercise, I'm not being careful about keeping the white inside the dress shape. I'm just sort of coloring it in, but you can if you want some edge practice. And then you can see the pencil lines just show through really nicely. Oh, I should mention, sorry, I should have said this before. If you choose to draw pencil lines on your wrinkles, make them very light because you don't want pencil lines showing through later. However, if you've just done what I did and colored the whole thing and your pencil lines are really dark, you can absolutely go back and erase now because chalk pastel does erase. So just go back and lighten up all your pencil lines. Mine are decently light, but I'm going to do it anyway just because I'm showing you how. And then you can always, if you feel like you need to, go back over it with white again. There we go. So we want your pencil lines to just barely show. So there's our first coat. Now we can go in sort of in any order because you can, oh, by the way, you can also have a cloth handy, or you can wear old clothes and wipe your fingers on your pants if you want. But you will get kind of dusty, so it's nice to have something to wipe them on. All the colors in this reference are pretty light. So normally I like to go from light to dark because it's easier. You don't have to fight darks if you put darks in first and then go back with lights. But in this case, you can just sort of go in any order. So I'm going to start with the gray because it's dominant, because there's a lot of gray. I should have cleaned that first. I had blue on it. That actually worked out nicely because there happens to be blue everywhere in this picture, but If it was green or something, I would have had to probably erase that. And I'm just going to put big blocks of color in wherever I see gray. And that is most of the dress. So even the pink areas, the yellow areas are gray. The only parts I'm not really coloring are the parts that appear totally white. So even in the shadows here, even where there's this highlight, I'm coloring that gray because that's not white. It's just lighter. This is white right here. See the difference between those two? So I'm just going to block this in loosely, not being too concerned if it's not exactly the same shape, but I'm getting pretty close. Definitely lots of gray on the sleeve. And then I'm going to get rid of the dust by shaking it off into the trash can, or you can blow it off. Many people, myself included, usually blend with our fingers in chalk pastel, but in this case I'm just going to be using the chalk pastels to blend because it creates a richer, more painterly effect. And if you blend, the color comes off, and this is a very light reference already, so I really don't want to remove any color. Now I'm going to go in with a darker gray and emphasize the darker parts of the shadows. So just anywhere those grays appear a little darker. And at first it's going to be like, wow, that's really dark, but don't worry about it. You're going to go back and blend with the lighter grays and the whites and everything. So notice in these more subtle areas, like along the belt, this part right here is actually a little bit darker than it is here. So I'm paying attention to that and I'm putting dark gray, even though it's garishly dark here compared to that. But again, we're going to go back and blend. So right now, you're just paying attention to anywhere you see darker grays. Let's see, that wrinkle, that wrinkle is pretty much entirely dark gray all the way up to the base of the sleeve. And then there's dark gray from this wrinkle down. And here. And as we're doing this, you can kind of notice and contemplate where the light source is, which is on the girl's back. It's coming from the left. So that means every shadow you're putting in is going to be oppositional to that. Like the highlight right here is the edge of that fabric is catching the light on the left, which means the shadow on the right is going to be darkest right next to it because that's where the fabric is overlapping. So just kind of going around and darkening everything. Take your time. You can pause the video if you need to. That's a little bit darker, but not that much. And this one kind of starts darker and then fades to light. Darker at the bottom. And kind of splits and goes light right there. Let's see. Yeah, that's mostly light. Okay, so I'll stop there with the dark. And then before I start adding blues and pinks and stuff, I'm going to go back with the lighter gray and blend all my dark grays because that's going to really start making this look cloth-like. So just take your light gray and color next to your dark grays anywhere you have a hard edge that you want soft. So I just colored that one on the top left edge. This one I'm going to color entirely, but kind of pull it towards the right because that's where the shadow is blending towards. So you can see how much that lightened it. I'm going to use a little bit at the top edge there to soften. And it created just this barely darker area here that we were talking about before, which is a lot lighter than the original dark gray. And that's why I wanted you to go pretty hard with the dark gray, because putting the light in is going to both lighten and blend everything. Getting tired of picking it up and putting it in the garbage, so I'm getting a little sloppy and just blowing dust everywhere, which is fine by me. That kind of colors up into that shadow. I'm going to add some more light gray here where I didn't add it before for these little sort of formless bits of shadow. And then on the top edge, it's pretty dark along the bottom, but definitely gets lighter as it gets towards the top. These will blend down. Okay, now I have a lot of dust, so I'm going to shake that off into the garbage. And now it's starting to look more like cloth. But you can see I have all these bright white highlights that are all equal in value, value meaning lightness or darkness. So I'm just going to look around and notice where are the really truly brightest ones. They're right here and here on the right and a little bit up here on the left. But all this stuff in the middle is a little darker. So I'm going to put some darker, excuse me, some light gray over those to make them less poppy, make them pop out less. All along this wrinkle here. And that'll help the other ones, the truly white ones, to pop out more. Made that one a little thick. Make it thinner. Darker here. All that stuff is dark because that's really under her arm, which is in the shadowy part. And that's better. Okay, now we get to get into some color, not just gray and white. So I'm going to get the blue because that's very dominant and start putting blues wherever I see them. So I'm just kind of using the wide side and dabbing them in for the most part because the dress is white. It's not blue, but it has these lovely blue shadowy parts. So I'm just sort of putting little dips and dabs of blue where I see them. We are going to go in with a darker blue for the darkest wrinkles and shadows. So don't worry about trying to get those dark with a light blue. It's not going to happen. But you can certainly put whispers of light blue in where those are as sort of placeholders if you'd like. You don't even have to do that because you're going to use the dark blue. It's up to you. That looks pretty good for the light blue. And then we'll do the same thing with the pink. The pink is less obvious, but if you look, there's just sort of a rosy glow, particularly through the waist area there. So that is what this is going to do. This is like a light kind of dusty rose pink. If all you have is a really, really bright pink, which is common in very small sets of pastels, then just go really lightly with it and then cover it with lots of light gray and white. Just little tiny whispers, little dabs of it will be plenty because the pinks in the bright pinks in regular chalk pastel kits, if you like a set of 12, they're really bright. So something like that. And then we're even going to do a little bit of yellow. As I mentioned before, there's these whispers, these hints of yellow, which are add some brightness and sunlight quality to the dress, like they're sitting in a sunroom. Beautiful spring day. Oh, I love this. It's just, I love spring. It's one of my favorite times of year, and I love sun. So adding yellow to anything is always delightful for me. Something like that. I'm going to put some over the pinks and blues because that's just what's happening here. Over her back and shoulder. And then we're going to go back with white and probably gray and blend again before we put in the darkest blue. So just go back into any area that you feel needs a little softening, or just if the pinks and blues are too dominant in the yellows, you can just kind of use the white and lightly color over them to soften and blend. Okay, blow off the dust or get rid of the dust. Now we're going to put in that darkest blue, and this is going to be lovely because it's really going to create the dimension and the shadow in the fabric. And at first, it's going to feel too dark. Don't worry about it. Just be pretty specific about where you put it because it's not everywhere and it's not thick or dominating, but it is very much present and it will create the dimension you need to make it really look like fabric. So I'm just kind of using the corner of the pastel, roughly creating edges where I see it. So I'm not making big, thick strokes, but I am pressing pretty hard to get it to show up. And as you've now experienced with the other colors, you can go darker, and then when we go back to blend, it will significantly lighten everything. And we can always go back and add more and layer more. So this is just our first pass at it. Actually, the sleeve seems kind of almost underlined by the dark blue. And then I can use the dark blue to sort of pull down shadow into the belly area there. And that'll help the sleeve to pop out a little bit more. Definitely a little bit of dark blue edging on the bottom there. And then I'm going to blow off the dust and then go back and blend with the gray, depending on the area. So in the darker areas, I'm going to use the darker gray first, and then maybe go back with the lighter gray if it needs it. So I'm just sort of pulling the blue down into the rest of the fabric, softening edges. Where it needs darkening. And this wrinkle right here still isn't dark enough, so I'm going to add a little bit of dark gray to it. Not pressing hard, just kind of trying to give it less dominance so that that highlight on the left can show more. Same thing up here. I'm going to do another pass with some darker gray since I have it in my hand, and also continue blending the dark blues. Darken those grays up there on top of the sleeve. And then we'll go back with the light gray and do the same thing. Make sure it's pretty clean. This actually kind of blends, the sleeve blends into the dress right there, so I'm pressing pretty hard. I'm going to press hard with the light gray here to get it to blend into the dark. Down here, kind of using a corner of the pastel to create a little bit of liney feeling on the sleeve there. Blend those down. That's looking pretty good. Up here, I'll use the light gray to blend the dark gray wrinkles a little bit more. Same on the belly. Kind of pulling some lines down now, and that's going to help mimic the brush strokes, which we can add a little bit of now that we're near the end. So the beginning was kind of more about getting the colors established and direction and everything, and now we can add some more texture. And then I'm going to put some white in, and the white, I'm going to focus on the bright white highlights, kind of getting those reinvigorated as needed, and also blend the surrounding colors as needed. So now I'm pressing pretty hard with it to get them pretty bright, get them to show up. Where we need them, a little bit on the outside edge of the belt here. and a little bit right there. There's a bit of a glow on that fabric piece that's not just quite showing up. So at this point, you can just sort of look around, see if there's anything else you want to adjust or add, and feel free to, draw the whole picture if you want, or just experiment with other cloth and other paintings or photographs. I hope you got a lot out of this time together today. I sure enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next time.